My name is William Carter. I'm 78 years old, and I live alone in a modest neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona. After my dear Martha passed away 3 years ago, the house felt too big for me. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sounds of neighbors and the television that I kept on just to hear some human voices. It was on a January morning, with that crisp desert winter air that Arizona is known for, when everything changed. I was returning from Murphy's Corner store when I saw some commotion on the street. A group of kids was gathered around something on the ground near the vacant lot. Curious, I walked over slowly, my sneakers shuffling on the cracked sidewalk. It was a dog, a young but already large Doberman lying in the shade of a mesquite tree. He was thin, with alert but tired eyes. His ribs showed under his black and tan coat, and there were some superficial wounds on his paws. "That dog's been there for 2 days," said Mrs. Rodriguez, my neighbor. "Won't let anyone get close, but won't leave either. I feel sorry for him, you know. I put out a bowl of water, but he won't take food from anybody." I looked at the animal, and something stirred in me. Maybe it was the expression in his eyes, a mixture of distrust and hope that I recognized. It was the same one I saw in the mirror every morning. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the upcoming chapters. I went back to my house, but I couldn't get the Doberman out of my mind. During lunch, while I heated up the casserole that Mrs. Patterson, another neighbor, had made for me, I kept thinking about those eyes. Martha always said I had a soft heart for abandoned animals. "Bill, you can't see suffering without wanting to help," she used to say, shaking her head but smiling. Around 3 in the afternoon, when the sun was milder, I returned to the spot with a plate of food. The dog was still there, lying in the same position. I placed the plate about 10 feet away and sat on a plastic chair I borrowed from Mrs. Rodriguez. "Hey there, buddy," I said quietly. "You hungry?" He looked at me attentively, his ears moving slightly. He didn't approach, but he didn't run away either. We stayed like that for almost an hour. Me sitting, him lying down, observing each other. The neighborhood life continued. Kids playing basketball, cars passing by, the distant sound of someone's radio. The next day I did the same thing, and the day after. Little by little, the distance decreased. First he sniffed the plate when I was about 15 feet away, then at 12 feet. On the 4th attempt he ate while I watched. "You need a name," I murmured, watching him devour the food hungrily. "How about Max? You look like a Max to me." From that day on, Max waited for me. Always at the same time, always in the same place. I started bringing not just food, but also fresh water, and eventually some dog treats I bought at the pet store downtown. It was on a rainy afternoon in February that he finally approached for real. I was under Mrs. Rodriguez's awning, protecting myself from the desert rain, rare but intense when it comes, when Max ran toward me, not to greet me, but to take shelter too. We stayed there side by side, listening to the sound of rain on the metal roofing. "It's okay, boy," I whispered, slowly extending my hand. "You can stay here." He smelled my hand, hesitated, and then, for the first time, let me touch his head. His fur was coarse but warm. I felt an emotion I hadn't experienced in a long time, the feeling of being needed by someone. When the rain stopped, Max walked with me to my front door. He didn't come in, but lay down outside, like a silent guardian. That night, for the first time in 3 years, I slept peacefully, knowing I wasn't completely alone. The next morning, he was still there, and the next too. Within a week, Max had chosen my house as his new home, and I had gained a companion I never imagined I needed so much. The first months with Max were about mutual discoveries. He was an intelligent, observant dog, but with a history I could only imagine. There was something in his eyes that spoke of abandonment, of distrust, but also of a deep loyalty waiting to be awakened. We established a routine. Every day at 6 in the morning, Max waited for me at the front door. I would go out to buy bread at Murphy's Corner store, a sacred ritual I'd maintained since retiring from the construction company 15 years ago. Max would accompany me to the corner and then return, always maintaining a respectful distance. "Bill, is that dog really yours?" Murphy asked me one March morning. "He just stands there waiting for you like a soldier on guard duty." I looked through the store window, and there was Max, sitting under the shade of a palm tree, his eyes fixed on the store entrance. I felt a tightness in my chest, pride and emotion. Yes, he's mine, Murphy. His name is Max. What an emotional story, don't you think? If you're following along, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. What struck me most about Max was his capacity for observation. He studied everything, the neighbors' movements, the sounds of the neighborhood, even my habits. When I went to the kitchen, he already knew if I was preparing coffee or lunch. When I picked up my keys, he could tell if I was just going to the store or if I'd be out longer. That's how I discovered Max had special intelligence. One April afternoon, when I was organizing the medications I took for high blood pressure and diabetes, I accidentally dropped a pill on the floor. Before I could bend down, a task that wasn't so simple for my 78-year-old legs, Max approached, sniffed the medicine, and gently pushed it with his nose toward my hand. "Thank you, buddy," I murmured, moved. "You understand more than I imagined, don't you?" The weeks passed, and our coexistence deepened. Max began sleeping inside the house, on an improvised bed I made with old blankets in the corner of the living room. In the mornings, he would wake me with a gentle touch of his nose on my arm, punctually at 5:30. He was better than any alarm clock. I discovered he had curious habits. Every time I sat in the recliner to watch the 8 o'clock news, Max positioned himself to have a complete view of the living room and window. He wouldn't relax completely until he was sure everything was in order. It was as if he had taken responsibility for taking care of me. "Max, are you a dog or a bodyguard?" I joked to myself, scratching behind his ear. The neighborhood veterinarian, Dr. Johnson, confirmed my suspicions when I took Max for his first checkups. "Bill, this is a special dog. Dobermans are naturally protective, but Max has a sharp instinct. He was probably trained for protection before being abandoned." That explained a lot. The always alert posture, the way he analyzed every person who approached me on the street, how he positioned his body between me and any suspicious movement. Max wasn't just a companion dog. He had become my silent protector. One May afternoon, when we were returning from the doctor's appointment at the community health center, something happened that further consolidated our partnership. We were walking down the street when two young men on a motorcycle approached at high speed. One of them shouted something I couldn't understand, and Max immediately placed himself in front of me, the hair on his neck bristling, a low growl coming from his throat. The young men accelerated and continued on. Maybe it was just a prank, but Max didn't relax until they completely disappeared from sight. "Thank you, partner," I whispered, running my hand over his head. "You really are taking care of me." That night, while we watched television together, I reflected on how my life had changed. The loneliness that consumed me after Martha's death had given way to constant and comforting companionship. Max wasn't just a pet, he was family. If this story is touching your heart, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And so, without me realizing it at the time, Max was already studying all my movements, all my routines, preparing for something I never imagined I would one day need. Every third Thursday of the month had the same ritual. I would wake up a little earlier, take a thorough shower, put on my most conservative dress shirt, the same one I wore to church, and prepare for one of the most important outings of the month, going to get my Social Security check at the bank. It wasn't just a financial matter. That money represented my independence, my dignity. For 42 years, I worked in construction, getting up at 4 in the morning, taking 2 buses to the job site. Every dollar of that Social Security had been earned with sweat and dedication. Max always sensed when it was bank day. Maybe it was my different clothes, the nervousness I tried to hide, or simply his sharp instinct. He would be more attentive, circling around the house as if he sensed that day was special. "Max, today I'm going for our sustenance," I would say, adjusting my baseball cap. "You stay here taking care of the house, okay?" He would look at me with those expressive eyes, his head slightly tilted, as if he understood every word. He always positioned himself near the door when I left, and stayed there until I returned. The route to the Wells Fargo branch was always the same. I would leave home, walk 2 blocks to the bus stop, take the Route 17, and get off downtown. From there, it was 3 more blocks walking to the branch. The entire journey took about an hour and a half. Are you enjoying Max and Bill's story? Then subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends. The branch was always packed on Social Security payment days. Huge lines of seniors like me, each with their own story, their difficulties, their hopes placed in those few minutes at the teller window. I always brought a book or magazine to pass the time, but ended up observing the people around me. There was Mrs. Thompson, an 82-year-old lady who lived alone and always complained about the wait. Mr. Davis, retired from the Postal Service, who told the same stories every month to whoever would listen. Mrs. Williams, a widow like me, who always asked if I didn't have a single sister to introduce her to. "Bill, you're looking pretty thin," Mrs. Thompson commented one of those June afternoons. "Are you eating right? Loneliness is tough, isn't it?" "I'm fine, Mrs. Thompson. Now I have Max to keep me company." "Max? Who's Max?" "My companion. A Doberman I adopted, or rather who adopted me." The topic became conversation in line. Everyone had a story about pets, about companionship, about how difficult it is to age alone. It was comforting to know I wasn't the only one going through these issues. After receiving the money, I always followed the same routine. Stopped at the farmer's market to buy some things for the house, mainly the special kibble that Dr. Johnson had recommended for Max. Then a stop at the butcher shop to get some bones that the butcher always saved for me. "How's Max doing, Bill?" Frank the butcher would ask. "That dog was lucky to find you." "I'm the lucky one, Frank. He's the one taking care of me." The trip back always left me more relaxed. With the money safely in my wallet and purchases in the bag, I felt accomplished for another month. It was a feeling of duty fulfilled, of independence maintained. Max always received me at the door, as if I had been away for weeks. He would jump, wag his tail, circle around me. It was the best part of the day. Seeing that genuine joy, that unconditional love. "I brought you some bones, boy," I would say, showing him the bag. Frank set aside the best ones. But there was something I didn't know. During all these months, while I religiously followed my routine of going to the bank, Max had developed his own parallel routine. A secret routine that I never imagined existed. If you want to know Max's secret, you can't miss the next chapter. Subscribe to the channel right now. It was only in early August, on a particularly hot afternoon, that the truth would be revealed in a way I could never have anticipated. And that discovery would forever change how I saw my 4-legged companion. Meanwhile, Max continued being the perfect dog. Protective, loving, intelligent. But he kept secrets that would only be revealed when I least expected it. The discovery happened by chance, on an August Thursday that started differently from the others. I was getting ready to go to the bank when I felt dizzy. Nothing serious, just the effect of getting up too quickly from bed. I decided to have some coffee before leaving and ended up running 20 minutes late. Max seemed more restless than usual. He circled around the house, went to the door, came back to the living room, repeated the process. I thought it was just anxiety about my being late, but there was something different in his behavior. "Easy, Max. I'm leaving now," I said, adjusting my wallet in my pants pocket. I left the house at the same time I always left when I was late, something that happened rarely, but that Max apparently already knew. What I didn't imagine was that my delay that morning would reveal something extraordinary. I got on Route 17, as always, but this time I sat on the right side, in a position where I could see the street better during the trip. That's when, passing by the main avenue of the neighborhood, I had a shock that almost made me get off the bus. There was Max, walking on the sidewalk, maintaining a distance of approximately 100 yards from the bus, but clearly following in the same direction. Can you believe it? Max was following his owner. If you were as surprised as I was, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. My heart raced. For a moment, I thought it was a coincidence, that maybe Max had escaped from home and was lost. But there was something in his posture, in the determined way he walked, that indicated purpose. He wasn't a lost dog. He was a dog on a mission. I stayed glued to the bus window during the entire trip. Max maintained the distance, always attentive to traffic movement, but never losing sight of the bus. When we arrived downtown, I saw that he had picked up the pace, as if he knew exactly where I would get off. I got off at the usual stop, my legs trembling with emotion and curiosity. I walked slowly to the bank branch, discreetly turning my head back every few steps. Max was there, always at a safe distance, strategically positioning himself behind parked cars and posts to avoid being seen. My God, I murmured to myself, how long has this been going on? I entered the branch as I always did, but my mind was completely focused on what was happening outside. I took my number and while waiting in line kept imagining where Max was hiding. Mrs. Thompson was there, as always, complaining about the delay. Mr. Davis was telling his stories, but I couldn't concentrate on anything other than the extraordinary fact that my dog had secretly accompanied me there. "Bill, you seem a bit distracted today," Mrs. Williams commented. "Everything okay?" "Everything's great, Mrs. Williams. I just discovered something very interesting about Max. When my turn came at the teller window, I made the fastest transaction of my life. I needed to get out and confirm if Max was still around, and more importantly, I needed to understand how long this had been going on. I left the branch and walked to the corner, pretending I was just getting my bearings. That's when I saw him. Max was lying in the shade of a tree in front of a coffee shop, positioned to have a perfect view of the bank entrance. When he saw me come out, he immediately got up and started moving toward the bus stop. The revelation moved me deeply. Max wasn't just accompanying me, he was protecting me. He had developed his own security routine, secretly escorting me during one of the most vulnerable situations of the month, when I was carrying money. What unconditional love is this? If you were moved by this discovery, don't forget to subscribe and share this incredible story. During the trip back, I kept watching Max through the bus window. He seemed to know the entire route perfectly, anticipating stops, traffic lights, points of greater movement. It was evident he had made that journey many times before. When I got home, Max received me as always, happy, jumping, as if he had been patiently waiting at home the whole time. But now I knew the truth. "Max, buddy," I said, kneeling down to get to his level, "you've been accompanying me to the bank all this time, haven't you?" He looked at me with those intelligent eyes, his head slightly tilted, as if he had been waiting for me to finally discover his secret. That night, while we watched television together, I reflected on my companion's silent dedication. Max had chosen to protect me in a way I had never perceived. And if my intuition was right, that protection would soon prove to be much more important than I imagined. It was a Thursday in September, with that lingering heat typical of Arizona before the fall season finally settles in. The sky was overcast, promising rain later in the day. I was preparing for another trip to the bank, but this time with extra curiosity. I wanted to better observe Max's secret routine. I left home at the usual time and, as always, Max pretended he was just going to walk me to the corner, but now I knew that was just part of his act. On the bus, I positioned myself strategically to observe him during the journey. There he was, following the bus with the precision of a secret agent. At each stop, Max adjusted his position, always maintaining the safe distance, always alert. Seeing that silent dedication filled me with emotion and pride at the same time. Arriving downtown, I headed to the branch as usual. The line was even longer than other days. Apparently many people had decided to take care of their banking business that morning. I took my number, 47, and settled in to wait. The electronic board showed they were serving number 23. If you're rooting for Max and Bill, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Mrs. Thompson was there, complaining as always. Mr. Davis was telling his postal service stories. The atmosphere was more tense than usual. Maybe it was the heavy weather. Maybe it was just my imagination heightened by the discovery about Max. That's when they entered. Two young men, wearing hoodies and jackets, even though it wasn't that cold. Something about their manner immediately caught my attention. They didn't take a number, didn't get in line. They just stood there near the door, observing. My instinct, sharpened by 78 years of life, set off an alert. There was something wrong with this situation. The two were talking quietly to each other, but their eyes kept scanning the environment, observing customers, employees, security cameras. The electronic board called number 35. 12 more people ahead of me. I started feeling uncomfortable and instinctively thought of Max. Had he noticed something different? That's when one of the men approached the teller counter suspiciously. The other positioned himself near the door. My heart began to race. This wasn't a normal situation. The man near the counter put his hand inside his jacket in a way that made everyone in the branch realize something was wrong. The teller, a young woman named Sarah, who always helped me, looked visibly scared. "Everyone stay calm," the man said, still not showing if he was actually armed. "We're not going to have any problems here." Panic set in instantly. Some customers started ducking down, others remained paralyzed. I was about 15 feet from the counter, not knowing exactly what to do. My age and physical condition didn't allow for any sudden movements. It was at that exact moment that Max appeared. I didn't see how he entered the branch. Maybe the automatic door opened at the right moment. Maybe he waited for someone to enter so he could slip in with them. The fact is that suddenly he was there, inside the branch, strategically positioned between the line of customers and the two suspects. This is the most tense moment of the story. If you're on the edge of your seat, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. The first man, the one near the counter, noticed Max's presence immediately, and what happened next was something I'll never forget. Max didn't bark. He didn't growl loudly. He didn't make any sudden movements. He simply positioned himself there, standing with that imposing posture that only a well-trained 90-pound Doberman can have. His eyes were fixed on the two men, his ears erect, his body slightly leaning forward. The classic position of a dog ready for action. The silence in the branch was deafening. For a few seconds that seemed eternal, there was a kind of staring contest between Max and the two suspects. I could see the calculation happening in the men's minds. Was it worth risking confronting that animal, clearly prepared to protect? "Dude, there's a Doberman here," one whispered to the other, loud enough for everyone to hear. Max remained motionless, but his presence emanated a silent authority that completely transformed the dynamics of the situation. The muscles in his body were visibly tense, ready to react to the slightest suspicious movement. That's when the second man, the one near the door, began to back away. "Let's get out of here," he told his partner. "It's not worth it." The first man hesitated for a few more seconds, but Max's intimidating presence had completely dismantled whatever plan they might have had. Slowly, both began moving toward the exit. Max followed them with his eyes, but didn't move from his spot until both were completely outside the branch. Only then did he slightly relax his posture and walk toward me. The relief in the branch was palpable. Some customers started crying, others talking nervously among themselves. Teller Sarah activated the silent alarm and called security. In the days following the bank incident, my life gained a completely new dimension. The story spread quickly through the neighborhood. Mrs. Thompson took it upon herself to tell half the world how Bill's Max saved everyone from the robbery. The branch manager, Ms. Patricia, called me personally to thank me. "Bill, that dog of yours is a hero. If it hadn't been for him, I don't know how that situation could have ended." She even suggested that Max be registered as a service dog so he could enter the branch whenever necessary. But what touched me most was Max's own reaction in the following days. He seemed to understand the importance of what he had done. He continued with his routine of secretly accompanying me to the bank, but now with an even more protective posture, if that was possible. Max's story is coming to an end, but if you were moved by it, subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends. The following Thursday, when I went to the bank again, I was received like a celebrity. Everyone wanted to know about Max. Everyone wanted to hear the story again. Mrs. Thompson even brought special dog cookies for the four-legged hero, as she put it. "Bill," Mr. Davis said, "that dog of yours isn't an ordinary animal. He's got human intelligence, I tell you." And he was right. Max wasn't an ordinary dog. During all those months, he had developed a protection routine so sophisticated that not even I, his daily companion, had noticed. He had studied my habits, my schedules, my vulnerabilities, and silently had assumed the role of my personal guardian. The police managed to identify the two suspects through security cameras. They were known for petty theft in the area, but apparently this would have been their first big robbery. According to the detective who came to talk to me, they confessed they gave up exclusively because of Max's intimidating presence. "Dobermans have that reputation," the officer explained. "They're extremely protective and brave dogs. Yours must have sensed the danger and took the initiative to enter the bank. I rarely see such an impressive demonstration of loyalty." In the weeks that followed, Max became a small celebrity in the neighborhood. Children would stop to play with him when we walked the streets. Neighbors who previously just waved now made a point of talking about the hero dog. Even the local community newsletter published a small article about our story. But for me, the most important thing wasn't the fame Max had gained. It was understanding how much that extraordinary animal had changed my life. The loneliness that consumed me after Martha's death had given way not just to companionship, but to the feeling of being protected, cared for, loved in a pure and unconditional way. What a beautiful story, isn't it? If you made it this far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. One afternoon, sitting in my recliner watching the news with Max lying at my feet, I reflected on life's mysterious ways. I, who had saved an abandoned dog on a hot January morning, discovered that in reality he was the one saving me every day. Max lifted his head and looked at me with those expressive eyes I knew so well. I ran my hand over his head, scratching behind his ear the way he liked. "Thank you, partner," I whispered, "for everything. For keeping me company, for protecting me, for giving me a reason to wake up every day with a smile on my face." He wagged his tail slowly, rested his head on my leg, and closed his eyes. It was our rest time, our moment of peace. Outside, the world kept turning, but inside there, in that simple living room of a simple house in a Phoenix neighborhood, there existed something few have the privilege of experiencing: unconditional love and absolute loyalty. And so, at 78 years old, I learned that family isn't just blood. Family is whoever chooses to stay by your side, who takes care of you in vulnerable moments, who protects you even when you don't realize you need protection. Max taught me that heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they just have four paws and a giant heart. And that the best guardians are those who protect in silence, out of love, without expecting anything in return except a spot on the couch and a scratch behind the ear. Today, whenever I pass in front of the bank branch, I remember that day that changed everything. And whenever I look at Max, I see not just a dog, but a companion, a protector, a true friend who came into my life when I needed him most, disguised as an abandoned animal in a vacant lot. Life sometimes surprises us in the most beautiful and unexpected ways, and Max was, without a doubt, the most beautiful surprise of my 78 years of existence.